Islamic organization that has its headquarters in Accra, and I have to keep running up and down. That is COMOG, you may be aware of.
No,
yeah, so
Coalition of Muslim
Organizations
in
Ghana.
Mm.
Yeah, I was, until last year, I was the president for COMOG, and that means that every now and then I have to be in Accra to help take decisions.
Mm.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, so, but again, you are a member, in fact, you are the chairman of the Inter-Religious Dialogue Committee in Tamale.
Right.
What exactly do you do within that committee?
Well, right from the beginning, the emphasis has been to advocate for greater awareness among religious communities of the need to get to know more about one another, and also to be able to work together, right? Work hard to remove the barriers that are entrenched between religions, and allow the religious communities to interact so that you get to know more and more about one another. And the more you know about your friends, you get to, you remove stereotyping and suspicion in dealing with them. So that is what we have been doing, giving education from community to community, and making the interreligious dialogue something that people should accept, for the purposes of ensuring peace in our societies.
See, when you take Islamic scripture, there are people who give various interpretations to these scriptures, and when you interrogate them, you are likely to believe every kind of interpretation. So, for example, you are talking about the fact that there must be some form of relationship between people of different religious groups, including Islam. But there are some Muslims who quote scripture and tell you that Islam abhors where persons make friends from outside the fold of Islam, and they actually make reference to verses in the Quran. I'm sure you're aware of this.
Yeah, you see, it is interesting that, religion is like a free market, that you'll find so many people sometimes claiming to understand things, in some particular way. But of course, if you go into religious studies seriously, and you go through the sciences, Quranic sciences and the Hadith sciences, that helps you to interpret verses correctly, you will see that there are certain things you will not say. You will not say, for example, that God wants us divided. He doesn't want us united, right? We know, for example, that Muslims are rather those that have the mandate, the direct divine mandate, to engage in dialogue with non-Muslims. Muslims are, right? If you go to the Quran, you'll see Muslims ask, "Qul ya Ahl al-Kitab," tell those who have received the book before you, right? "Ta'alaw ila kalimatin sawa'in baynana wa baynakum an la na'budu illa Allah wa la nushriku bihi shay'a." Invite those that have received books on it, that is Jews and Christians, right? Invite them to dialogue on matters that are common among you. Matters that are common are matters that will not lead to debate that will destroy relationships. Matters that you all have a stake on, right? So you come together and dialogue. Islam is the only religion among the three Abrahamic religions that has that direct mandate You see, before then, you realize that in the Christian constituency, we have the Christian Council. The Christian Council, until after the World War II, that were able to develop structures and policies to respond to global plural world, you know, to respond to the plurality of religions and societies, right? Until then, the World Council of Churches had thought that, you know, other faiths were not relevant and they didn't have to deal with them, right? In a similar manner, until the middle of the middle part of 2000. No, not 2000. The second World War. Okay. Second World War. After the Second World War, that is the time when the what is it called? The Catholic Church. The Catholic Church decided to study global relationship, interfaith relationship, in what they call Vatican II. At that time, the Pope invited all priests, you know, to Vatican. And for almost 3 years successively, they held meetings to determine the relationship of the Catholic Church with other faiths that are non-Catholic. Right? So there was this question about the salvific property, whether there were any religion apart from Catholic, you can find salvific property. That is to say that that religion has the property to save you, right? To save your life on the day of judgment, whether your religion can stand for you, right? Until then, the Catholic Church also did not have answers as to whether other religions were truly religions.
Okay.
Right. Until then, what they call the Second Vatican Council meeting, where it was agreed that some respect should be given to other non-Christian religions, such as Islam and Judaism and others. So at that time, you know, the Catholic Church opened up and made what was known as, you know, etate as one of the laws or the principles Catholic Church would follow to relate to other religions.
So, Sheikh, the point you're making is that Islam has always been open to dialogue, and you have quoted portions of the Quran that indicate that Islam
has the mandate, direct mandate. He's saying, invite them, invite the people of the book.
Do you not find it contradictory that the same Quran, in the 3rd chapter, around verse 28, and I'll read portions to you, and that chapter for those who are Muslims is called Al-Nisa. It says, yes, let not the believers take the disbelievers as awliya, and awliya here means friends or helpers, instead of the believers. And whoever does that will never be helped by Allah in any way.
Okay, see, every religious text, be it the Quran or the Bible or whatever, should not be interpreted, you know, just directly like that without reference to the context. Right? Before I go to make a comment on this, I want you to know that the Prophet himself had non-Muslim friends during his lifetime. He had a lot of friends from the Christian community called Najran, where we were just about some 10 kilometers or so from Mecca. He had a lot of friends from them. He had a number of friends from the Jewish community. He exchanged a lot of goodies with them. So if what you are saying is true, who is the first to break the law?
The Prophet of Islam.
The Prophet of Islam. So that means that if you take it in general terms, Muslims are not supposed to relate well with non-Muslims. They should relate among themselves. Then the Prophet Muhammad having Jewish friends, Christian friends during his lifetime will violate this so-called principle. So we look at the context in which we see. Supposing, for example, in Medina, we had the Muslims. We have Christians, we have Jews. Then we also have the traditional people, Aus or Hazraj. Right. These people were all within the Medinan society. Right. So if they were together, working together, definitely the Muslims were supposed to be much more closer. Closer because their religion is the same. The laws, the Sharia that they go by is the same. So everything about them as a religious community is the same. So they are much more closer, right, and can accept one another much, much better. But that's notwithstanding, the religion allows us to relate with all manner of people that we find within our society, whether they are Muslims, they are Christians, they are traditionalists, or they are Jews. Our religion as Islam permits us to relate in various ways. Right? The principle of relationship in Islam is based on our definition of the neighbor.
Right.
All right? Who is your neighbor?
I'll come to that issue
okay, so,
subsequently because I need us to build the conversation.
Okay.
Then we'll get to a crescendo.
That's right.
So in still talking about building dialogue so that we can have a cohesive society where development can take place, where we will not suspect each other, I can tell you, Sheikh, that there are many non-Muslims who are very, very skeptical and suspicious of Muslims, because when they themselves, as non-Muslims again, refer to the Islamic scripture and even listen to some of the justifications given by certain groups of Muslims for taking certain actions, these scriptures then make room for such non-Muslims not to have total trust and faith in that person called a Muslim, and therefore even consider making that person a friend. So for example, and I can't recall the exact verse of the Quran, but there is a verse in the Quran that says, wherever you find the non-believers, kill them. And people justify killing by making use of this.
So you see, here again, we are talking about interpretation and whether we are quoting, making this reference to the context within which this statement was made or not. You see, Islam as a religion has a body of laws that regulates, violent engagement with non-Muslim communities, right? A set of Sharia, let me say Sharia laws. Sharia is a law. So right. Sharia laws and regulations governing, Muslim response to aggression. So it is not that the Quran will tell you wherever you come across a non-Muslim, kill. This will not make sense. What would the God of Rahman Rahim, which is the merciful, the loving God, the merciful God, what sense will this, mean if God creates us and set us against one another to kill and share blood? This is a misunderstanding of divine purpose for creating us. God will not create us and say, okay, now you are Muslims, you are Christian, you are this, so kill one another. what kind of God will that be? So if we misunderstand the purpose of God for creating us, we have the tendency to interpret something like this. So without any provocation as a Muslim, when you meet a non-Muslim, kill.
See, okay, so you've spoken about this, but
so
again,
you see, the point I want to make
yes.
is that all these interpretations, we have come across them, and they are taken out of context, right, to demonstrate that there is an innate enmity between or among the religions, and this is not true.
But again, you asked a very important question, that will God create man just to cause confusion between man so they kill each other?
Yeah,
but
apparently.
Again, referring to your own scripture, the Quran, talking about the creation of man, it says that when God spoke to the angels and told them that I'm about to create a representative of myself on the earth, the angels then asked God, are you about to create therein one who will cause disorder and shed blood?
Yes.
And then he says, I know that which you know not.
Yes.
The angels, according to your scriptures, said that you're about to create somebody who will come, cause disorder, and shed blood.
Yeah, so here, the first question that we ask, how did the angels come by this information? Right? We believe generally as Muslims that whatever we believe in Gaib, whatever is hidden, only God has the access, the sole access to such information. How did the angels come by this information? In any case, commentators on this have tried to suggest that God has created some jinn race who occupy the earth and then destroy everything good. And so from this example, the angels thought that human beings were coming to be the same. So they made their opinions known to God. Now, are you going to create somebody to represent you on earth? Someone who will come and destroy everything beautiful, share blood, and do all manner of things, you know? But because God knows and declared to them clearly that he knows what they did not know, God knew a human being is not only destructive, he's also constructive. So the angels were only interpreting the dirty side of a human being and ignoring the shiny part. I mean, and every shoe, just like your shoe, if you look at it, the top is shiny, but the downside of your shoe could be nasty. Sometimes it could even pick, you know, dirty things such as feces, right? So if you are interpreting the shoe, don't just look at the dirty part because you step on the ground. Look also at the shiny part. Look at both sides of the shoe. So the angels only decided to look at the nasty part of a human being, that he has the potential to kill and destroy. He has the potential to destroy everything beautiful God will create. But that doesn't mean that this human being represents the classical human being God knows, because God has created and has given the man the power to decide to do good and also to do evil. And that is why religions exist. Religions are supposed to guide us, to shine our hearts so that we don't go doing the things that the angels are talking about.
I've been asking you the type of questions I've been asking because it's to suggest to you, and indeed give you evidence, that there are a group of Muslims, especially, and I'm referring to Muslims because you represent also the Muslim community. When you were chairman of Kumog, you are an imam of the Quran Mosque in Tamale, and therefore that's why I'm using the Islamic examples in this instance, that there are groups of Muslims who attach those interpretations that I gave out, which you have responded to, in talking about having a dialogue with the next person who might be a Jew, a Christian, a traditionalist, whatever, Zoroastrian, whatever religion they may belong to, before you can have a dialogue, there must be trust. But if the person who wants to have that dialogue with you has these kind of interpretations, it will make having dialogue very difficult. What steps are people like you taking to ensure that the correct interpretations are attached to the Quranic verses and that all these misconceptions are done away with in the first place?
You see, just as I started saying, you know, religions before this time were thinking more of themselves and their internal affairs. So Christians were thinking about themselves and their own internal relationships that they call ecumenism. Ecumenism. This was what worried the Christians. Muslims were thinking about themselves. Others were thinking about themselves. But, you know, it came to a time that people thought that, I mean, we are not living, you know, independent of others. So we have to start thinking, how do we relate to those that are not from ourselves? So how do we relate to them? Now, the question of interfaith relationship is relevant because, I mean, the world is becoming more and more, you know, a global village. And we do a lot of things together as people without even thinking which religion you belong. So that is why we have different forms of dialogue. We have different forms of dialogue, and the aim of it all is to create a structural dialogue, or if you like, a formal dialogue right from the national level to the grassroots, so that, you know, people will, it will have a permanent format and procedure through which people will gradually become more and more informed about interfaith relationship. For example, Muslims in this country have their leadership. Christians have their leadership. So if there is a problem between Muslims and Christians, how do we handle this? Should we say it should go out openly, you know, fighting one another? There should be a way. And we think that that way should start from the grassroots. And that is what we are doing. We are informing people more and more about the need to relate to the religious other, so that you will get to know about that the person's religion, his values, and things like that.
But where,
and through that, you will be compelled to respect that person, because you will begin to see that you share a lot of things. For example, Islam and Christianity belong to Abrahamic traditional religions. And when I say Abrahamic traditional religions, I mean it is all of them. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, they all trace their origin to Abraham. Abraham is their grandfather. So that means that Abraham, as a religious person, also has a culture from which he grew. So these cultural aspects are going to be shared in common. You will find these things found in common in Islam, in Christianity, and in Judaism. So that is why when you look at the Old Testament, a lot of things are there that both Christians and Muslims share in common. For example, if you talk about oneness of God, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism will come in to stand for it. If you talk about the concept of angels, revealed scripture, day of judgment, you know, the concept of paradise and hell, all these things are things that we share together. So if, for example, you are quick to say that Islam is false, you see that your statement Islam is false will also go with all these things you also believe and subscribe to. You see, so there are sort of things that, sorry, there are so many things that we share in common that we have to respect that, and we have to know that once you believe them to be true, then the other sister religion cannot totally be condemned as false, right? So that is the point. And until we learn about each other, until we learn about what binds us, you know, we will still have time to listen to those who are saying we cannot be together, we cannot dialogue, we cannot do this, right? Because they are interpreting, this is what they want. They don't want to see Islam and Christianity and other faiths relate. So they interpret the Quran in a manner to justify their position.
Okay, but even in instances where both religions have tried to relate, there have been cases where we have had tension arise even in this country. So, for example, regarding the recent controversy during Ramadan, where in Wesley Girls, which is a Christian school, there were some Muslim students who wanted to fast. According to authorities of that school, fasting was not permissible, and it degenerated into all manner of conversations with people expressing their views in very, very strong terms. I'm sure you were concerned at the time.
Yeah, and this is the reason why we think that we need to promote dialogue from the grassroots to the national level. You see, once people do not understand why the need for dialogue among religions, you know, they will say all manner of things like this. In fact, in the school where this happened, if they were dialogue conscious, something like that will not have happened. And if the Christian leadership in this country, the Muslim leadership in this country, had made dialogue an important structure, social structure that we must all promote and get to work, misunderstandings of that nature will not happen, because we will get closer through dialogue. And through that, our Christian brothers will get to know that we don't play with our fasting, right? Even if the pang of hunger could be anything, we will still want to fast. They would get to know that children in our homes, by the age of 7, are able to fast a whole month. So if they get to know this, and a Muslim child goes to school at the age of over 15 years, they will not be thinking that when that person fasts, he will collapse. Well, the example they were given was that they had their students who fasted and collapsed, and so the schools banned all manner of fasting. But that is not the case. The Christian fasting is not the same as Muslim fasting. And even if they are the same, we start too early. Muslims start fasting too early in their lives, that by age 10, 15, they can fast, you know, conveniently without feeling anything. They won't faint. So by feeling that, you know, if they allow the Muslim students to fast, you know, and denying these Christian girls who fasted and were fainting, there would be a misapplication of the school rule.
On the flip side, Doctor, Muslims always say that Islam is a very realistic religion that adapts to situations.
That's right.
And so one thing that even the most basic person who has no basic knowledge of Islam, but one thing they all know is that Muslims detest pork. Muslims will not eat pork.
Yeah.
Yet Muslims will tell you that if it becomes extremely necessary, and then it is only the flesh of pork that will save your life, you are permitted to do that.
Yes.
You extend that same argument, you find yourself in an environment which is largely controlled, owned by non-Muslims, and they say, these are our way of doing things. For the time being, if you desist from practicing your religion because of the situation, that will not cause any harm, will it?
Well, it is not the question of whether it will cause harm or not cause harm. The question is that suggestion even relevant? Who are they sympathizing with? Is it the one who is going to fast or their own selves?
It's a matter of law. It's a matter of rules and regulations.
Yeah, and the rules are saying the rules must always be justified. And the justification was that Christian girls fasted and were fainting, right? But they didn't care to find out what happens to Muslim girls. You see, so that is why matters like this need to come through dialogue, understanding, right? If you make a general rule, and that general rule affects somebody in a special way, I mean, there is the need to look at the general rule again, because the law, the school rule was supposed to minimize Christian girls who were fasting and fainting, right? And so no fasting. But how many Muslim girls could they count in that school who had fasted and fainted?
Should they have waited for an incident like that to have happened?
That is the reason why this must be dialogue, right? The Muslims in that community or in that school should come into dialogue with the school authority. Is it that you just don't want fasting, or you don't want people fasting and fainting?
Right.
What is it that you want?
I get your point, but again, were you concerned about the subsequent recommendations that lay Ghanaians made, whether it was on the Muslim side or on the Christian side, regarding the fact that, okay, the Muslims began to say, look, we must go out there and build our own schools. And I sat back and said, segregation. And then you found some non-Muslims saying, well, if you cannot abide by the rules in non-Muslim schools, then leave and go to your own schools. Again, I thought to myself, segregation. Is that what we want? Were you concerned when you heard some of these
Indeed,
recommendations?
we were all concerned. And the reason, and that is the more reason why we think that Interreligious Dialogue Committee must work harder, right? Because as long as we don't understand each other, we are going to continue to be at each other's throats. But when we understand each other and the values that we all hold dearly, then we begin to respect one another. You see, so the suggestion that we have been making in every forum that we find ourselves in is that there is the need for this country to have a structure for interreligious dialoguing. Because whether we like it or not, there will always be misunderstanding among religions, and there should be a body to respond to such misunderstanding and know how to manage it. It's not everybody that can manage religious misunderstanding. There are some, you know, I have heard when there was this confusion, I heard some respectable religious leader, a Christian, who was saying that, well, we are a majority in this country, yes, and if the government doesn't do anything about it, in the next election we will not vote for the party. You see, this is not necessary. What is important is we want to keep our people together, right? That is why we have religious plurality and religious pluralism, right? Plurality just tells us about the statistics of how many people are in this country who are Christians, how many are Muslims, how many are traditionalists. It's a religious plurality. But when we talk about religious pluralism, we are talking about the quality of a relationship among religions in that particular geographical space. Quality of a relationship. And that is where religious pluralism comes in, right? So we have to recognize that in Ghana, we are experiencing, we have an obvious religious pluralistic society. Everybody knows that.
Right.
So, and pluralistic society comes with its own challenges. We are saying that interreligious dialogue provides a way of finding solutions to otherwise very challenging issues facing religiously pluralistic society. So in Ghana, we would want to see our leaders not just waiting to quench fire when it comes up or to fight fire, right? Because we have seen Christians, Muslims, and so on come out, especially when there is a big problem, and they sit down and then say what they think, and then there are people who will accept.
All right.
But what we want is that there should be a recognized structure in this country dealing with matters relating to interfaith relationships. And we have a ministry. We have a ministry that has to do with chieftaincy and religion, right? So what is happening, we have been seeing what goes on about the chieftaincy aspect. But the religious aspect, the ministry, we don't see what is going on there. We want the ministry to take up this challenge, bring the different religious bodies together, their leadership, and see how they can fashion out an interfaith structure for this country, so that when there is a problem, we know who are going to handle the problem. We won't leave it as a sit ajar.
Okay.
I give you one example. In Yendi, there was a problem in the Yendi hospital about a decade ago. Yes, about the siting of a mosque in Yendi hospital. A piece of land was given to them long ago. The Muslims did not get money to build the mosque. Later on, the hospital was growing, and the mosque found itself in the very center of the hospital. So the hospital administration, who were largely Christians, held a meeting to say they should relocate the mosque somewhere. And according to what we heard, somebody made a nasty statement that the Muslims will make noise if we allow them to. They will make a lot of noise and to disturb the wards that are here. So they were going to be relocated. They refused to move. And at the end, Muslims in Yendi Township, were mobilizing to attack the hospital, right? So at that time, Interreligious Dialogue Committee was invited to intervene. We are made up of Muslims, Christians, and other traditional religions. So we selected some people to intervene. So by 4 a.m. of the day they wanted to demonstrate and enter the hospital, we were in Yendi, trying to cool down, and we managed to cool down and got them to understand that the relocation would not affect the Muslims. Now, right now, as I speak, the mosque has been relocated to the place near the mosque, and the Muslims are happy. Now, if they take their dead from the mosque, they don't have to carry it afar, just a few steps, and they are in the mosque to pray. So you see, we always need a structure or an establishment that will play a particular role. If we believe that there will always be interfaith misunderstanding, we must have a body or structure ready to respond to such challenges.
All right. Sheikh, not too long ago, the Chief Imam extended some gesture to the construction of the proposed National Cathedral. There were sections of Muslims who went on, especially social media, and condemned that action of the chief imam. Indeed, others went overboard and even attacked the personality of the chief imam himself. That gesture, good, bad, you don't have an opinion? What is it?
Well, you know, the particular issue of the chief imam's gesture was, in my view, not the question, right? People played politics into this. People started thinking that, well, this is an MPP government, and the president is an MPP president, and he wants to do a project, and he wants Ghanaians to contribute, and so they interpreted the whole thing from the perspective of who is asking for help to do the church. And that is where the problem came out from. But if you look at whether, the question whether a Muslim can show a good gesture to a Muslim, to a Christian, there would have been no debate about that. There would have been no debate at all about that. Because the reference to this in the Quran is clear.
Right.
You see, I want to start from the beginning. You see, if you look at Islam itself, the very day the Prophet was asked to wake up and proclaim the name of God, the Most High, that very day, the very first person he consulted on this thing was a Christian, right? We all know the history, Waraka ibn Nawfal, yes. A Christian monk, right? So the very first day, when these were revealed, and the Prophet went home in a fever, you know, told the wife the story, the wife said that, yeah, I know that you are a truthful person. Everybody knows. So if you don't understand your experience, I will send you to Waraka ibn Nawfal to help you digest what has happened. Waraka ibn Nawfal was a Christian monk. So our relationship with Christians is not today. It started right from the very day Islam was born.
When Muslims were persecuted in Mecca.
I'm right. Coming up. When Muslims were persecuted and they the Prophet wanted a safe haven for them, again, he sent them to Najash. In Negus, in Ethiopia, that time, Abyssinia. And they took care of them for almost about 10 years without asking them to convert to Christianity. They gave them land to farm, spaces in their market to trade, and all manner of things, facilities, without asking the Muslims. And you see that was a critical moment for the Prophet, because people were being killed here and there just because they say, oh, we support, we declare that there's no God but Allah and Prophet Muhammad. Just that, you are killed. So if that continued, who would have come out to say that he supports the Prophet Muhammad? Islam would have been killed from the grassroots. But because these Christians offered their country as a safe haven for the very first acceptance of Islam, we realize that Islam progressed until the Prophet himself migrated to Medina, and the Muslims who migrated to Abyssinia joined him from there. So that is the second stage where Christianity has supported the growth of Islam. Okay. Right? And so when you continue, you see when the Prophet Muhammad in 630 Constitution of Medina wanted to establish a state, again, he invited the Christians, he invited the Jews and others, and together they put up a constitution of Medina, constitution that respected the rights of Christians, the rights of the Jews, and the rights of the Muslims and traditional people. So what I want to say is that, you know, the fact that we relate, and we want to relate more and more, it's not a question of today.
Right.
It's something that started right from the day one when Islam was born. And we have to keep improving this relationship. You know, from time to time, definitely there will be problems. There was a time after the prophets when the Christendom thought that Islam was becoming a new religion that wanted to seize the lands they were already holding as imperialists, right? So Islam was also, that was the time, you know, conquer and annex was the philosophy of all, right? So Islam was also conquering certain territories and annexing them. Christendom was doing that. So at some time there was this crusade and jihad. And for several years they were fighting each other. But at some time it stopped. The crusade stopped, the jihad also stopped. But it took different forms later on, right? So what we are saying is that there will always be misunderstanding. And if we want to control this misunderstanding and take matters in responsibility of whatever is coming into our life as religious people, then we must have interreligious dialogue as a structure in this country.
Sheikh, we are almost out of time, but before we go, there are lots of people watching who have expressed interest in this program. Let me just read some of your messages here. Tem Afobu, you say very important. Going forward, what we need is to build resilient structures to sustain such relationships. Thank you very much for your message there. Castro Apia says, I really like your questioning skills. It seems they are dividing us on the grounds and enjoying at the top. Joseph Tete says he's watching Moomen tonight. Suleimana Alidu, may Allah increase my sheikh in knowledge, and I'm sure you're referring to Sheikh Dr. Al Hussein Zakaria. Freeman Ansar on my WhatsApp, sorry, I saw it a while ago. Freeman says, Moomen, please ask Sheikh about Boko Haram. These are a group of people who say that anything that is not of the Arabic culture is haram. Okay, so it's Western education is haram. That's what it actually means. Yes, yes. And you want me to ask him about that, given the fact that we're talking about inter-religious faith. Okay. Moomen, I know Sheikh from Tamale, and I am sure he's aware that we have many preachers who, instead of attacking other religions, rather choose to attack persons who belong to different sects from within their own religion, and I'm referring to Islam. Ask him if he's aware of this, and if his group, the committee he belongs to, are also helping to assuage the conflicts with respect to intra-religious conflicts. The messages are just so many, but yes, Kasisi, okay, Kasisi says, you are a breath of fresh air. That's one of our Christian brothers. He is enjoying the conversation. He thanks you, a breath of fresh air as well. Kasisi, thank you very much for that message. Yes, but Boko Haram, intra-faith troubles in Tamale. You come from Tamale. You're aware of all of this?
Yeah, certainly. Without wasting so much time with the Boko Haram, you know, Boko Haram, everybody knows that Muslims have suffered in their hands more than non-Muslims.
That's true.
They know that. So if we cannot say they are fighting for Muslims in any way. You can't be fighting for people that you go out to kill their mosques and their markets and so on and so forth. They are, you know, the unfortunate thing is that people tend to listen to them. When we say they are not Muslims, they are not acting in the name of Islam, people still like to call them Islamic terrorists, Islamic this. You know, that kind of stereotyping still goes on, and that is keeping them going.
Let's wrap up quickly. Intrafaith
problems? Yeah, the problems, intrafaith problems, I think if the one who is asking this question is from Tamale, he should just ask Muslim leaders from the Ahlul Sunnah, they should ask the Tijaniya at various times when there are tensions, whether they they haven't received support and counseling from the interfaith dialogue group, right? I belong to that group. The Archbishop of Tamale belongs to that group. Incidentally, about 4 of us who are from interreligious dialogue also belong to the Peace Council, Northern Regional Peace Council. So we work together to solve problems when we realize if there is a problem in Tijania, we know what to do and we know where to go. We know who should intervene to get peace back. So we are working not just for external relationship, but also within our own religions. If there are problems, we try to find solutions.
And the last question, very, very briefly, just before we go. Moomen, good evening to you. Please ask Sheikh this very simple question for me. Being a Sheikh and a Muslim leader, will he send his children to non-Muslim schools because he is preaching unity among religious groups?
Oh yes, my children have experienced, have gone to non-Islamic schools, Christian school for that matter. My children, some of them have gone to Christian schools, right from primary school to JSS and so on. So what is wrong with this? We all know, as far as the Ghana government, the Constitution of Ghana is concerned, that we are in a secular state, and that no particular secondary school is out to teach Christianity absolutely in the manner they will do in the church.
All right.
So nobody should be worried about that.
Sheikh, we are out of time now.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for coming. We've been speaking to Sheikh Al-Hussein Zakaria. He is the chairperson of the Inter-Religious Dialogue Committee in Tamale. He is also an expert in global interfaith relations. He's the imam of the Quran Mosque in Tamale as well. And we found out he was in Accra. We had to grab him for this conversation on interfaith dialogue and how we can use that to build cohesion and national development. Sheikh, we are grateful that you found time to come.
Thank you.
And we do hope that next time you're in Accra, we can continue with this very important discussion again.
Indeed.
We will be here tomorrow. The U.S. ambassador to Ghana, the Minister for Youth and Sports, then also the chairperson of the NCC, as well as other security experts will join us in the GBC studios at exactly 10 a.m. for a very, very important discussion. And I'm sure you don't want to miss that tomorrow right here on GBC News. Have a very good night. Bye-bye. When the voices that matter speak, they speak to GBC. They speak on Moomen tonight.